My name is Jana Muma. I am the Director of Learning and Development here at Grace Hill. I've been here a little over 5 years. Previous to that, I spent 20 years at a large property management company, over 40,000 units, as the Vice President of Learning and Development. I did oversee all of the maintenance training, and it was one of the things I enjoyed most. I wanted to provide the best training that we could possibly provide to all of our maintenance associates. It was very important. It's very near and dear to my heart. So I am, again, very thrilled to be here today and provide you with any of my background and expertise and experience. And joining me, we have so much expertise on this call. Joining me is my partner in crime, Pam Roberts, and I will let her tell you a little bit about herself and then introduce our subject matter expert.
That's right. Thank you, Jana. And I am Pam Roberts, and I'm a training account manager with Grace Hill, and I too have been in the industry for what seems like to be a really long time. So those of you that have calculators handy, I think it's close to 30 years this November, and I've been with Grace Hill for about 3.5 years, and glad to be here working with Jana on these presentations. And we have such a great presentation for you today. We have so much enjoyed working with Chad, who we are going to have introduce himself, but just a little bit about Chad. For one, next week he's going to be in Indianapolis at the Apartment Association. So if you're there, stop by and see him live. We are happy he is here with us today. He is an original 2012 maintenance rock star. So congratulations.
Woo-hoo! First year.
Thank you so much for being here. And Chad works full-time, and he also has his own company where he trains on maintenance. So I'm going to let him tell us a little bit about himself. Take it away, Chad.
Thank you very much. Well, first off, I've been in property management since I was 18, so I'm working on 22 years plus myself. Started as a groundskeeper and worked my way up from there. So I've held pretty much every position. I even leased apartments for a little while part-time, which really helped me understand the flow of things. Not only from the maintenance side, but from the office, and noticed that there were some issues between the two that I didn't really know were there before, so that helped me out greatly. So I started my company because I saw that there was a need for a more in-depth type of training for our maintenance professionals. It's really great to get some training from some people, but when you have somebody up in front of the room who's actually done the work and have taken these things, put them into motion, and they have worked in a real world setting, whether it's an old property, new property, large property, small property, it's better to get that insight from somebody who's actually done all of the jobs that there is to do. So, I work with a lot of great apartment associations, and, I really enjoy my time out actually training for apartment associations and for Grace Hill.
Okay, well, with that being said, thank you again, Chad. And Pam, you want to tell everybody a little bit about Grace Hill?
I do. For those of you that are not familiar with Grace Hill, and even for those of you that are, thank you for being a supporter of Grace Hill. We are a leading education provider. We are apartment industry specific training, so we know what's going on in property management and love working with all of you. And if you want an easier way to track training, then Vision Learning Management System is for you. So you can track that training, add your own training, send auto email alerts so that people that haven't done their training can complete that training for you. So if you want more information on that, please click on that link right there on the bottom right, and it'll take you right to our website where you can find out all the information about Grace Hill and our Vision Learning Management System.
8 ways to involve your maintenance teams for success. And again, we're so delighted to have Chad here with us to be able to speak to each and every one of these 8 items. And I know you're going to walk away today with some wonderful ideas, no matter what position you hold as an attendee on our conference. So Chad has a personal story about how this came to be with these 8 different ideas. I'm going to let him share that. And then we'll jump into the first idea. So, Chad, you want to go ahead and take that over for a minute?
Sure, Dana, thank you. Well, I noticed that early in my career, I was put in situations that I really didn't know how to handle. I was 23 years old, first maintenance supervisor job, and I was horrible at it because nobody told me what it really entailed. And to get training on certain things, and these 8 things I've found over my career since I started, that I found that some properties ran easier than others. I didn't really understand why. And then when I started really breaking things down and seeing what was going into the properties, how was I handling things as a supervisor? How was the office handling things? How were we working together as a team? I've identified these 8 things that if you have them going on your property, and you can also train to these things, not only for maintenance, but for the office sometimes as well, uh, your property will run smoother. And some of them are a little bit outside the box, but like I said, I've noticed that with these 8 things being active on the property, it makes a world of difference of how smoothly it runs and what you can get done. Okay, well, we talked about company culture, and some companies already have a company culture. It's if they follow that company culture. I've worked for properties, or for companies that their company culture was a plaque on the wall, but nobody knew what it meant. I started doing a lot of things as far as company culture because I was the guy that they usually sent into the difficult situations, really far behind. Residents aren't happy. Nothing there is really working on the maintenance side. And what I had to do first was change that culture. So the culture is, what do you want to be known for? What is it? What are you going to be about? On my properties, in my shops, it was all about safety. We were safety first, customer service second, then making budget third. And if we do those first 2 things, it seems like the third thing almost kind of took care of itself. But really, you could just start it up. If your company doesn't have a culture, start it in your shop or start it on your property. It's okay, to start from somewhere, but it's a big deal that the culture, how you deal with things, the order you deal with things, is a big deal to be successful.
I completely agree, Chad, and that's such a good point because we can call a spade a spade. We have large companies out there that obviously have a mission and vision defined and values and all of those things. But we have some small companies out here, and I'm sure we have a lot of participants from small companies that may not have that as defined. And I love your idea. Make it something that your maintenance team decides that you all come together on as the culture of the service that you provide day in and day out to our residents. Without that, nothing would happen. So, Chad, you want to update them on number 2 real quick?
All right, communication. As we all know, communication is a big deal. Usually there is a disconnect of some sort between office and maintenance. It just happens. We talk different languages. We usually want to do the same things. We just go a little bit different ways of doing it and expressing that. So about communication is, if you have a problem with with communication on your property, identify it. What is it? Is it just spoken communication? Is it written communication? Sometimes I've had issues with teams with nonverbal communication. You might say one thing, but if you roll your eyes and while you do it, then it really doesn't mean that much. So identify what the problem is on your property, and it says right up there on the slide. I'm a big proponent of saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Communication, if the communication is precise and is very clear, and it makes it easy for everyone to understand what's going on, that's the whole thing. Is you want to be sure that your communication is frequent and that it's clear. And don't forget your residents in the communication loop. There are things that we do on property that we need to make them aware of. If we're coming in for preventive maintenance, or if we're shutting down a parking lot because we're repaving it and striping it, we need to give them enough notice. If we're shutting down a sidewalk and we say, hey, don't go grocery shopping on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday because you're going to have to walk around your building to be able to get into your apartment. Things like that will end up going a long way with not only the relationship between maintenance and the office, but really between the property and the residents.
Good
Right.
information. Go ahead, Pam.
No, I just want to say I think that happens in all of property management, and I think sometimes we segment ourselves, and it's not a 360 experience, which I think Chad is kind of playing to here. So it works in all areas, and not only with ourselves and our staff, but also with our residents and our clients. So bravo for that, because I've already written this saying down because I liked it so much and Chad, this is all his. So we hope you get as much of it as we have. We've enjoyed it. And then, Jana, I think we have a good poll here that might speak to some of the things that Chad was just referencing. So if we could put up that second poll.
I would agree. Terry's on it. She's putting it up. Yep. And I have to, while everybody's voting, I have to piggyback on Chad and Pam's comments here that, you know, that quote that is Chad's coined quote is awesome. I mean, you really do have to mean what you say, period, and say what you mean. But that goes, Chad mentioned, which is so important, the verbal, I mean, the communication physically. So you're looking at my eye contact. If I say something and I roll my eyes, you're probably like, she doesn't really mean it. If I were doing that to you right now on this episode, you would not feel as though I was connected to you. But it also is so important to understand that communication in emails. Tone can be read into emails, and it's not even intended. So be very careful about your tone in emails, your expression in person, and all of that contributes to effective communication.
Right, and I think the interesting thing about the poll results is we had 47% that said that they have great communication. So bravo,
yay!
And we had 45% that says one side communicates better than the other. So hopefully some of those bullet points that Chad just passed around will help or be helpful for you, and we can learn from it. And if not, we can learn from each other and best practices. So I think you open up chat a little bit. Tell us what you're doing. That is so great on communication. But with that, I think we should go to the next item and take a peek at number 3.
I agree. Right. And Chad, take it away.
Customer service and resident retention, they go hand in hand, right? If we're giving great customer service, people are going to stay. They're going to sign those renewals. Those are less turns that we're going to have to do, and we can actually maybe put our focus on some other things around property instead of so many make-readies. So with customer service, you need to ask yourself, are your service teams really involved? And by being involved, I mean, you know, at resident functions, are they doing more than setting up the tables and emptying the trash? Which we do that too, don't get me wrong, but to actually be part of the event. And it's really great when the maintenance team is actually part of the event because it gives the residents a different look at the service team and also gives the service team a different look at the residents. You know, we interact with them in a different way, in a more social environment, and it's okay. People do give us those questions, hey, you haven't come and fixed this yet. And we would say, well, I'm sorry I didn't know about that, but, you know, I would always make it a point where there would always be a maintenance presence. If somebody came up with something and they were really concerned, we stopped what we were doing and went and handled it. And, you know, I was cooking out at a pool party, and a lady came up and said, I'm sorry, but my air conditioner's down. I said, well, when I get this stuff off the grill, I'm going to have a little bit of time. I'll go over. Went over 15 minutes, fixed her thing, and, you know, that was like the best thing that she said that she's ever seen. And it was really just doing our job, but it was about, you know, taking that time to interact with the residents. And how do you get them involved? Well, you really just need to ask them, you know, this is what we're doing. We're trying to drive the, you know, our customer service, our resident retention. You know, I used to ask for volunteers for certain things. Not every maintenance person needs to be at every function, but there needs to be a maintenance presence at every function. And, you know, really the renewal, you know, if making your maintenance team part of your renewal program is really great. You know, I had a program where my maintenance people and myself, you know, 2 months before someone came up for renewal, we would take things like furnace filters, caulking, drip pans, doors, you know, the basic stuff, and knock on people's doors and say, hi, I'm Chad from maintenance. I just was stopping by to see if you needed anything. And, you know, we seen our resident retention skyrocket, after having this program in place for more than a year. So there are several ways to get your teams involved and several things that they can do, but just to be sure that they're involved is the first step.
Great information. Love it, love it, love it. So we all know the importance of that, but he puts it in a whole different perspective for us. Pam, you want to talk about the next one a little bit?
I do. So number 4, technical training, which is one of my favorite items ever.
We need to open chat. Emily, open chat for us. Sorry, Pam. Okay, go ahead.
Technical training, which is one of my favorite items ever. Chad is going to hit on that and why it's not only important for property management as a whole, but specifically for maintenance. So Chad, go ahead and let us know that wonderful information.
Well, sure. Technical training, of course, that's what we need, right? It's what we do. We fix things. We fix situations. We take bad things and make them better. How does technical training help? First off, it helps with efficiency. If you're giving your service teams very good technical training, you're making them better at what they do day to day. If they're better at what they do, they can do it faster. They can do it more effectively. They can get it right the first time because they've had the formal training. Where we seem to lose a lot of time and a lot of effort is when we don't really know exactly what we're doing. We take longer to fix things than it should, and then we don't fix them exactly the right way, and we have to end up going back. So efficiency is a big deal. And also employee attitude. You don't think about technical training having a positive impact on employee attitude, but if you have the technical training and you know exactly what to do in most situations, if not all situations, it gives you an air of confidence. When young in my career, when I didn't know anything about HVAC, I used to hope and pray that no one would call me on call about an air conditioner because I had no idea what I was doing about it, and nobody took the time to show me about it. So I'm pretty sure I upset some people early in my career because I could not help them because I didn't have the training. So employee attitude is a big thing. And then once again, what we just talked about, resident retention. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it, you're doing it effectively, and you're doing it with a smile on your face, it's going to help with your resident retention. People are going to feel like they're being taken care of, and that's a big deal. When your residents are comfortable with the people who are coming into their homes to be sure that they're fixed and that they're secure, you know what? They're not going to worry about signing that renewal for a few more bucks a month. They feel taken care of, and that is a big deal. And so with up on the slide, it's another thing. It's a simple saying, but another saying I say all the time is, if you knew better, you do better. And that's really what it boils down to. Technical training will help your teams in so many different ways. You just have to make time to get it done.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And Chad, I think we all were talking as we were putting together this presentation that sometimes we get frustrated because it does take time to learn those things, but the half an hour that it takes to learn a specific item could save you 3 hours when you have that on-call or that resident that needs your assistance very quickly. So sometimes we training as when it actually could benefit you later on the job instead of not having an answer.
Well, another thing I say is you have to take time to save time. If you take that time and you become more efficient, every time you use that skill, you're going to save time.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, so type into chat. I want to hear from the maintenance associates that are on our call right now. So all of you maintenance associates, you're all rock stars. It doesn't matter if you were selected as one previously or not, you're all rock stars. Have you taken any technical training in the last month? Just a yes or no. Have you been involved in any training? Specific to your job. When I say technical, I mean what Chad is referring to. Okay, so it looks like we're getting almost, I would love to say 50-50, but it almost looks like, maybe getting more yeses, more nos. So 50-50. So those of you who have said no, type into chat for me. If you haven't had any technical training in the last month, is it something you would really want if it were provided to you, and maybe it's something that's not available, but you just want to find a way to do it, right? Everybody wants
Lots
to
of
be trained, and yes.
yes,
So,
lots of yes.
okay, love it. All the yeses here. Well, we are going to help you with that. We're providing it today. We're going to continue to offer some webinars for you, and you can always reach out to Chad, who provides that training. And Grace Hill has some great, exciting things to come up on the maintenance side. So just stay tuned for all of that good stuff. Okay, we're going to move on to vendor and supplier management. And you know what, Em, let's leave chat open a little bit. I think they're enjoying talking to each other. So let's leave it open through this one, and we will go on. Okay.
All right, vendor and supplier management. Another thing that I learned was if I did not have a role in my vendors and suppliers, things didn't work out as well. Or once again, early in my career, I was told who I had to use, not really told why I had to use them, and I just kind of accepted it because I didn't know any better. So with vendor and supplier management, one of the things is, how do you choose a vendor? I used to put my vendors through an interview process, much like I would, if I were hiring for a service tech or a groundskeeper, and I would let them know that, hey, this is what we're about. This is what we need from you. This is how we operate. And I would make sure that we were a good fit for them as well as them being a good fit for us. So, with the interview process, also the bidding process, I made the mistake for years and years of bidding out projects, and I would meet with each individual vendor and show them what I needed, and I would go over the same project 4 or 5 times. Then I got the bright idea that, you know what, let's gather all the vendors together at the same time in one room and go walk this stuff together as a group. And I noticed that not only did I get more consistent bids, but I got better bids because they looked around in the room and they knew who they were competing against. So it kind of helped out with that aspect. You save a little bit of money, but what I saved most of was time. I didn't have to go through that 4, 5, 6 times in a row. And how many vendors should you have? I'm not a person who liked to put all my eggs in one basket. If somebody couldn't help me do something, I had nowhere else to turn. So what I do is I usually on my properties, I would do an 80-20 split, which means I had a vendor who did 80% of my work, and I had another vendor who did the exact same things that did 20% of my work. So if I vended out paints, I would give 8 paints to one vendor, 2 paints to the other. Where I found out too is that I got a lot better consistency in my work because that 80%er knew that that 20%er was there waiting to take over their 80%. So it really helped out as that. And then, what role do your vendors play on your property? Do you have any sort of parameters of when do you call a vendor? Is it a time issue, a money issue? We used to say if somebody couldn't fix something within 2 hours and wasn't getting anywhere with it, then it might be worth our time to call a vendor so they could go on and do other things, let the vendor handle what they need to handle. So, setting time limits on, time and money is a big deal. But once again, that goes back to part of that culture. Is it put out there? Does everybody know the rules to call a vendor, or when to call a vendor, when not to call a vendor? Is it okay late at night if somebody has a flood that your guy could just call the water extraction company and get them there as fast as possible, or do they need to call 3 people to get permission? That goes back to our customer service. The earlier that we can get there, get the problem taken care of, and get the people back to normal, it's going to end up helping us out in the long run. So vendor supplier management is very key because I treated them like part of my team, and they were expected to perform as such.
Great information. I'm going to address a couple of questions we've had here. I want to let everybody know that we are planning on a Q&A session at the end of this. However, I think one question does relate specifically to this topic, Chad, if you are okay with this. For those of you who cannot stay longer than you committed, which is about 3 minutes from now, we are obviously going to run over. It is being recorded, and we will probably re-record the entire session since it has been broken up into 2 pieces. So You will get all of the information you need, all of the slides. I've seen people asking, what was number 1 again? What's number 2 again? You will have access to download all of that information at the end. But Chad, Daniel has asked, how do you convince vendors to, I gotta hide this screen. How do you convince vendors to come bid or be vendors locally? We are a small town. Seems like everything we do, we have to call another state. Any ideas or advice there for him?
Well, that is, I've had to actually oversee some properties that are kind of in some outlying areas. So if you are in those outlying areas, because I know that sometimes vendor pools are limited, I think that the best way to get the best out of that situation is actually have a good relationship with the vendor. Be sure that if your vendor pool is limited, then you don't want to cut anybody out per se, because then you will find yourself relying on one and only, and then that's where we have pricing issues, we have availability issues, things like that. So for some people in the outlying areas, it could be a little bit tougher.
That seems to be an ongoing challenge with many different aspects of property management when they are, in those outlying areas. So good question. Thank you. And again, we are going to stay after for more questions and answers. Pam, you want to take us into number 6? Or do we just do 6? Oh, no. Okay. Yep. We're good.
You know what we need is a checklist like what is on the picture here.
That's right. That's right.
No, Chad's going to talk about service team management because we all manage our teams, but there's definitely things that are a little bit different about service teams. So Chad, take it away.
All right. Well, you see on the slide there, some jobs do not accommodate checklists. And I know that in property management, we are crazy about our checklists. We have make-ready checklists, painting checklists, cleaning checklists, start of day checklists, end of day checklists. What happens in between? So what I like to talk about is workflow. I talk about workflow. And for some maintenance supervisors, they don't really know what workflow is. Once again, I was guilty of this. I was the guy that I did anything that was put in front of me, and that's what I concentrated on. I didn't worry about the next thing. I just wanted to get done what needed to be done, what somebody told me needed to be done. But with workflow or scheduling a certain way on your properties, what I found works so much better is I would schedule 80 to 70% of my people's day, because we all know on property things come up. You don't know what's going to happen 15 minutes from now. You could have a flood, you could have an air conditioner go down, you could have this, that. When I tried to schedule out 100% of my day and 100% of my people's day, I never got everything done. And it made me feel kind of bad because I thought in my head, I should be able to get all this done, but stuff comes up. People ask questions. I have to go help people. I have to do this. I have to do that. And I didn't get things done. But when I scheduled 70 to 80%, I got everything done plus some. And once again, we talk about that employee attitude. If you have people who are getting done the goals that are put in front of them every day plus some, they really feel like they are contributing even more to the property. It's a good feeling to know, hey, I had this make ready to do, I had these 8 tickets to do, I got them done, and I was able to go help someone else with another make ready, or I was able to do some other tickets, or however you have that day scheduled out. And then I made sure that everyone had check-in times during the day. Everybody on my service team had a bin on the wall. The cleaners, housekeepers, or the groundskeepers, techs, everybody, even my vendors, had bins on the wall. So if I had something for them, I would put their tickets in for them, so they knew that they came in right before lunch, check the bin. They came in at 3 o'clock, check the bin. Because what used to burn us so bad was we'd show up at 5 o'clock at quitting time, and then all of a sudden see that there's some things in that bin that needs to be done that nobody told us about. So then we're working on time, overtime. We're working, trying to get as much done as quickly as possible because we're there on overtime. We want to go home. We want to see our families. But, to have a workflow in on your property to where people are checking things out. And then this also extends out to the office. If something comes in, do not write it on a Post-it note. Put it in the computer and print it out and put it in that bin. And if it is what I would call a priority, not an emergency, but a priority, pick up that radio, pick up that phone, and call your maintenance supervisor and say, this came in, and let them make a decision who can do that, when, and where. And it goes back to communication. Communication is so key for everybody to feel that they're all on the same page on property. And another thing with service team management is a big thing is cross-training. Training everyone how to do everyone else's jobs, or at least where the jobs overlap. So if somebody calls in sick, when I was a maintenance supervisor on site, I was always the fill-in person. If we needed help with tickets, I did tickets. If we needed help with make-readies, I did make-readies. If my groundskeeper called in, I did the pools and I did grounds, because I had my other people scheduled out to get done what they needed to get done, and I could really flex myself a lot easier, but not all the time. And so cross-training, and then another big point that I'm really big on is mentoring. If you have a newer person on property, or you have a groundskeeper who wants to make that step up to a make-ready tech, let them come. I saw someone in the chat, and that's what it's about. You take that person. I used to tell people, if I can take a great person, I can teach them anything. If they have the drive, if they're there on time, if they're a really good employee, I can teach them. No big deal. You want to take time and invest time into those type of people to make them better, to bring them along in our business. And mentoring is not only about nuts and bolts. It's about situations. It's about life issues. It's much more than that. But when you invest in your people in a deeper level, you will get so much more out of them. So mentoring is huge.
Well said, Chad. I agree with that. From every aspect of property management to life experiences to any job that anybody does, from raising kids to cleaning the house. I mean, that is such a profound thought, really, on how we can all be successful. I mean, how many of you out there have tried to train somebody who doesn't want to be trained? You are not going to succeed. You can't. And those of you with training experience, and I'm sure that's all of the maintenance associates we have on, you have all tried to cross train. And, it's great to cross train, but when you have somebody who thinks they know it all and doesn't want to learn, there's no hope. So spend your efforts. Chad's right. I agree with him on those people who are eager, willing, positive. You're going to make a great associate out of those people. The ones that have the negative attitude and know everything, you might not have as much luck. So, yeah. All right. So let's do a poll real quick. We're going to do 2 polls. Really? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Terry, stop. If you started it, we're going to do it after this one. We're going to talk about time management first. And I have to tell you, those of you who registered, we asked you a question. When you registered, what was your biggest challenge in training maintenance associates or feeling trained as a maintenance associate? Our top 3 were communications, which Chad has already done a fabulous job addressing. And then we had time management. We know that is very, very hard, and he has given you some great tips on the bins and checklists and things of that nature. So let him continue on to the second one. Those are the top 2. And the third one, just to let you know, is making time for training, which kind of overlaps into time management. So we're going to let Chad tell us some tips on time management, and then we'll do a poll.
Well, for me, time management breaks down into 2 major categories, and that's scheduling and organization. If you can schedule things and you can organize, you can save time. There are countless other ways to also save time, like we talked about the training, technical training, mentoring, and cross-training. If you can have more people that can do more jobs, you can get things done faster. But for scheduling, first off, I would just simply say have a plan. How do you operate your property? What is your turnaround time like on turns? What does that look like? Or is everyone different? There's There should be a consistent plan on your property on how you achieve things. And another thing is to be flexible. And that's when I talked about scheduling out that 70 to 80% because we have things that come up and we have to deal with those emergencies right then and there. And we all know that there are different degrees of emergency. There's the emergency where there's a building that's flooded out, and then there's the emergency for the lady whose one burner isn't working and she's having people over for dinner. To that lady, that's an emergency. And that's why I didn't say emergencies, I called priorities because it is not that every work is a priority, but some situations lend that you need to get them done in a more timely manner. And be realistic. Don't shoot for the moon when, I've started out on properties. It was no big deal for me to go on a property that had 400 open work orders and 60 vacant apartments. I could not fix that in a week or a month even. But you had to have a plan. You had to get things. You had to kind of chip away. You had to take care of the new stuff coming in as you're getting the old stuff. You had to have a plan in place. And eventually we did get there, and it ended up being really good. And once, like the slide said, and I said earlier, you got to take time to save time. If you're investing that time to make your processes better, to make people more efficient, they will be, and you will end up saving that time for the rest of your career or every time that you took some time to learn something, how to be better at it or to be more efficient. Every time you use that skill from there on out, you save time, and you will get that back. I couldn't tell you how many times. And then with organization, the biggest thing for me, and I'm a real big proponent of color coding and everything should be in its place kind of thing. Organize your shops. And I even went, I had my teams actually organize their shops, color code shops. Plumbing is blue, electrical is yellow, HVAC is green. So anybody can walk into anyone else's shop because sometimes we're on call for other properties, right? Well, if you can walk into someone's shop and at least see where those main components are, you can walk over there, get what you need, and go fix something. Work orders, organizing your work orders. What does that look like? Do they come into the maintenance supervisor? Maintenance supervisor breaks them up to who needs to do what when, or does everybody just put them in a bin? And I've seen where they thought that everybody should choose their own work orders, and everybody's changing doorstops, but nobody's working on an air conditioner. There needs to be decisions made of who's working on what and when. And really, if you have those two things, it will help you save so much time. It'll make you, manage your time so much better just by scheduling and organizing.
Wonderful information. Pam, what do you think? A time for a poll real quick? We have 2 of them. We know you're pressed for time, but we really want to see this information from you before we move into the last topic, which Pam will talk to you about in a second. Okay, yep. So operations, so if you are an operations associate, on-site leasing assistant, community manager, you know who you are, do you think that you include maintenance teams in the budget process? Maintenance associates on this call, I don't want you to answer this one. We have one for you in a second. Let's see what they think.
Everybody gets a turn.
All right, Pam, you want to speak to that and run the next one?
Sure. So, yeah, it looks like, Jana, surprisingly, I think this number is kind of higher than I anticipated. It's 62%.
I agree.
That, they always include in budgeting process. So I have to give it to you there because that is definitely the way to go because they're the ones that are going to know the numbers. So we'd love to hear that. Most of the time with 16% says most of the time. So we want that 16% to get over there in that always column because just what Chad was saying, taking the time and getting with the team is going to save you some time and probably a lot of money on those budgets. Sometimes 16% and haven't considered 6%. So a lot of good information that Chad provided, and now it is the time for the maintenance side. So we'll go ahead and put that up.
And I have to respond to Daniel, and he said, that's right, Beth. Beth, your comment is absolutely right. So those of you who get what Beth said, which is maintenance is the biggest chunk of our budget, and you involve them, once you realize that, then it's great. And I'm excited to see if maintenance associates feel as if they are involved, and it looks like they do, Pam.
Yeah, it looks like the
Most of
percentage is
them.
running really close to the same on this one, actually. Right now, what, 42%? A little lower.
Yeah, a little lower. Not too
Yeah.
much though. That's good. We got 26% that say sometimes.
Yeah, so it's very
19% say most
interesting.
of the time. Pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 26% say sometimes, definitely. Yeah, and so challenges from us to you is to both sides to ask to be part of that budget consideration, and to, if you're on the operations side, to invite them to the table on the budget. So something to keep in mind. Keep those words that Chad just said, and the reasons why the process works so much better when everyone's involved. And then that'll take us right to that next topic, which is number 8. And it's a surprise, it's
Our
budget.
final.
So we'll have Chad talk a little bit about budget awareness. I know some of you are in the thick of this right now. It's budget season. You're either already done, you're planning, or you're just now starting to tear your hair out. So go ahead, Chad, on budget awareness for maintenance.
Well, budget awareness is huge, right? It's what we're all about. We're, at the end of the day, everybody wants to make money. They want to make their budgets, and we all get there in different ways. But what I like, I don't call it budgets. I call it maintenance economics, because that's exactly what it is. Sometimes we have to go from one subject to another. Maybe we take a little bit of money from here and we put it here. It's maintenance economics. And what I say is you need to get your maintenance supervisor involved, at least involved, if not helping prepare their parts of the budget, not only operations, but capital budgets. What is going wrong on the properties? They should know. Usually our maintenance supervisors know the property the best out of anybody on the team. It's really about, if you think about it this way, you're putting somebody in charge of a multi-million-dollar asset who has no idea how the money is coming in or going out. But they're expected to operate that place day to day. Get them involved. And, for me, it was a big deal. I mean, I had no control over my budget. I had no idea what was going on with it, but who was held accountable for it? I was. If I was ordering parts, if I was fixing things, if I'm calling vendors, and then sometimes if I would ask my manager, I'd have to constantly ask my manager, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And sometimes I just got told no, and I thought, well, I wouldn't be asking if we didn't need it, but so I just get told no, and I had no reason why. I just kind of accepted it. Well, I got told no. But to be able to help prepare and understand how it works, not only, a big overview, but really zoom in on the maintenance part of it, really it can also get your teams involved, the service teams. If they know, not everybody realizes that everybody is budgeted in occupancy, and there is an economic occupancy that they should be hitting. Well, if they're giving out more concessions and things like that, well, that hurts that number. And if you're supposed to be, if they're budgeting you at 95% full, but you're at 88% full, then maybe, if you need to cut back. In a thing that I did over the years once I learned about this is I would take my budget and I would cut it by 8% and try to operate within that field and say, you know what, I'm going to try to save on my budget so it helps save on the bottom line. Because there's no way I can operate at 100% capacity if we're not at 100% where we're supposed to be. Sometimes there are decisions that need to be made. What are we going to put in there? Sometimes you try to get an extra life out of a carpet, and if that apartment sits for a little bit, then you got to bite that bullet and go ahead and replace that carpet and get it leased. But if your teams are up to date, they know the statistics, they know how occupied you are, they know how you're doing on your budget overall. It really makes them want to become part of the solution together, instead of them just saying, well, they said we can't have this just because. And set goals. If you are behind, how do you get ahead, or how do you reach that, the property level income, or PLI, or NOI, or whatever you want to call it. A lot of people call it a lot of different things, but how can you get there? And by setting those goals, it all goes back into a lot of the things that we already talked about. It's about communication. It's about vendor and supplier management. I would time after time I'd walk onto properties that were doing really bad economically, and I looked at their vendors and they're charging 20 to 30% more than they should because they've been there forever. Well, I'm sorry, but I know you've been here for quite some time, but we need to bring everything back into alignment where it should be. Um, there's so many things that you can do on a property, but really having the knowledge to not only help prepare, but to help keep that budget is a very powerful tool.
Wow, Chad, I cannot even begin to tell you how valuable that information is and communicating to the entire maintenance team how they truly impact the bottom line of the entire company. I mean, it's amazing. So, Chad, you have such great experience and knowledge, and we can't thank you enough. I had planned when we weren't running overtime to have everybody type into chat as we summarized the 8 things, one thing that they learned from you. But I'm going to change this because we are pushed for time, and I just want to hear what's number one. Type into chat. Who knows number one? We did 8. Number one is, I'll give you a hint. If you can't type it in, culture. Yay. Thank you. Okay. Number 2. What's number 2? We have to work on our communications. Oh, look, somebody copied and pasted all of them. Love it. Communications are so very important. We have to continuously improve on this. And that is not just maintenance and operations. That's everybody in our lives. Okay. Number 3, huge one in our industry. Without them, we don't have a job. Customer service, that's right. Retention service. Okay, number 4. Without us conducting this episode today, you need to have your training. That's right. And we are here to help you with that in any way, shape, and form. Number 5. What do I have for number 5? Those vendors. Look at all the participation. I love it. Okay, number 6. Number 6, you got to manage
Service team.
your team. That's right. You got to manage your service team. Am I right? Did I skip one? Oh, yeah. Okay. Number 7. Somebody was ahead of me. Number 7. Yes, there you go. Time management. The biggest one we heard that you all want help with. I can tell you, and this is not to throw in a plug for Grace Hill, but we do have a course on this. And it is geared towards both maintenance associates and office associates alike. You can all benefit from this course. It is a very good course, and I encourage you to take that course. So you're jumping ahead of me. Number 8. Budgets, involving everybody in the budget. And you think about it, my analogy on this is the household. If I don't involve my kids on my budget and they think that I can allow them, or they think they can purchase $200 pair of Nike shoes or $100 shirt. No, that's not going to happen. So we all sit down and we talk about the budget of our household. And I make sure that they understand, and by no means am I calling anybody kids. That's not the point of this, but I have to understand their needs. They have to understand mine, and we have to all work together on what we can afford to make the best, happiest household that we can. So that is my analogy on the budget piece of it. We all want our happy communities and our happy households.